I looked it up. The flower garlands are in there. You have the top coloring. Oh, okay. And we don't know about the lights because they came off as well for some reason.
So then, again, with the meditation session, or the first part of the session, to focus the mind using the breath, and then the second part, the main body of the meditation, analytical meditation, and today, meditation on the 4 kinds of generosity, given that in the text now, very much the subject will be around cultivating the mind of generosity. So placing one's body in a comfortable position, one that is conducive for not only feeling comfortable, but also conducive for the mind being alert. And so for this, each person has to, work out what's best for their body-mind combination. But the general words of advice in meditation, where we're trying to maintain alertness of the mind rather than relaxing or falling asleep, is to try to keep the back straight. And then also to assist in keeping our mind alert and focused, to motivate in a positive way for engaging in the meditation practice. And here, that if we're able to try to apply ourselves well, try to apply ourselves with conscientiousness to the focus on the breath, then this can enable us to develop the focused mind, which in turn is conducive for us to be able to focus on or examine the main body of the meditation practice. Today, the developing the quality of generosity. And then from this, creating conducive conditions for us engaging in the teaching session, tuning into the teachings, and whatever else arises today in relation to the study of this text, the Bodhisattva's way of life. So again, if you already have a method that works for you to focus the mind, then to apply that method. And if you don't have, then one way is to generate an awareness of the air, sensation of the air coming in through the nostrils and passing back out. And trying as best as possible to maintain an awareness of the sensation of the air coming in and going back out again. And having that alertness of mind so that when the different distractions arise, you note these and don't get caught up in the story. The idea here is not to be swept away by them, nor to try to suppress them, but just to note them. Note their arisal like you'd note the arisal of the bubbles rising to the surface of a pond, just to note, and to allow those bubbles to dissolve back into the pond. So likewise here, thought arises, distraction arises, to note this. Can even label it, memory or plan or whatever, and then bring the mind back to the breath. So then, continuing like this for the first part of the session. So now with the main body of the meditation, meditating on these 4 kinds of generosity. And these 4 kinds of generosity are firstly the generosity of, or material generosity. And material generosity including generosity of giving one's body, and then generosity of giving protection to other beings, and then the generosity of giving Dharma. And these 3 are described in the Lamrim tradition. And then there is also a description of generosity of giving love, which I think is described coming from the Tantra, although I'm not 100% sure. So then just reflecting on these 4 kinds of generosity. And firstly then, generosity, when it's described, it's defined, it's the wish to give. It's principally dependent upon the mind, rather than the act of generosity, or the recipient, or the object that we give. It's principally our mind determines whether it is the quality of generosity the wish to give. And the perfection of generosity is when the act of generosity, or the mind of generosity, is conditioned by bodhicitta, the aspiration to reach enlightenment in order to remove all beings from suffering. So then cultivating that action of generosity, conditioned by that perspective, that understanding. So then pretty clearly, if we were able to generate that quality of mind very strongly, the bodhicitta mind, or the mind that's focused on the welfare of others, wanting to remove them from suffering, sensing that their suffering is unbearable and we want to remove their suffering, then our actions, what we would be doing, whatever we possibly can do to bring that about, we would engage in. So this means really the perfection of generosity would be coming from a very joyful mind, only too willing to give. So that could be quite challenging for us, but it's something that we can work on. As His Holiness often says, there's nothing that can't become easier with familiarity. So then with this first type of generosity, material generosity, the generosity of giving material phenomena. So there are various ways that we can do this depending upon our life circumstances. That we may not even have very many things or very much money. But clearly, if we're able to do it with pure motivation, then those very modest acts of generosity become very powerful. Especially when they're conditioned by very powerful mind of bodhicitta and devotion to spiritual practice, devotion to holy beings, and particularly with the recipient of our act of generosity is someone who's close to us or someone who is benefiting us or has benefited us. The act becomes more powerful. So the story at the time of the Buddha of a king who put on a sumptuous banquet for the Buddha, providing best food, best ingredients and everything. They made an offering of this meal to the Buddha and disciples. But at the same time, outside was a young boy who was observing all this and rejoicing in the act of generosity of the king. And it was the Buddha that afterwards mentioned, although that meal was something wonderful that had been offered, actually the greatest positive result occurred for the young boy, in dependence upon that mind of rejoicing, but also the mind of giving, wanting to give, whatever it can possibly do. There are also stories in the time of the Buddha of people extremely poor making very, what would be considered insignificant offerings. But because of the purity of the motivation, then the result is extremely powerful. So this quality, this ability to be able to give like this, really giving, is very much dependent upon us becoming more and more inner beings, understanding the importance of inner development. Really wanting to develop that altruistic mind. And the more that we appreciate that mind, then the more that we'll be more able to be generous, more able to counteract the mind of miserliness. Because the happiness comes in the experience of giving. There'll be a result later on, but actually if it's purely motivated, then there's happiness in the process of giving. And after all the things that we possess now, we're going to be separated from. And all these objects are in the nature of impermanence. So it makes more sense wherever we can is to cultivate this quality of generosity of giving material things. And there are a multiplicity of ways that we can do this to various projects, which And they don't have to necessarily be Buddhist, but we can make material offerings to various activities and charities and so on. We can set aside a certain portion of our income for particular activities and projects like this. And so there are many, always opportunities to arise for us to be able to be generous, to give food and so on like this, to offer meals to others. And the real generosity of giving material things, the real test, say, is in terms of our capacity to actually give away our body, to give up our body. Like Buddha Shakyamuni did in previous lives, in past life stories, in the Jataka tales. Gave away his life, previous life to a tigress, so she wouldn't kill her young babies. Or like when he takes rebirth as a monkey king, he gives up, he sacrifices his body in order to protect the tribe of monkeys from the human king and his army. But for us, of course, now, it's not suggesting we need to do that. It says in the teaching, saying, not to give away your body until you could give away your body like you give away vegetables. But we can get a sense, we can generate the appreciation of that, of the capacity to be able to give. Generate respect for it, for those who've done that in the past. And after all, our human life is so incredibly valuable now, that if we surrender our human life, we lose this human rebirth, our potential to benefit others. And there may not be necessarily such a great gain if our motivation isn't so pure. The second type of generosity is a generosity giving protection. And so that is really cultivating an attitude, a view in the life, that we've got this human life and we have the capacity with our intelligence and with compassion to live our life in such a way of respecting the lives of others. Cultivating that quality of mind in which we see others, respect for them, see that they wish to have happiness, to be free from suffering. And our business as a human being, with the intelligence we have, to not use that intelligence to cause harm, to be a source of protection to those, particularly who are more vulnerable. And the generosity of giving protection refers in two ways. First off, generosity of giving protection is to give courage to others who have fear. Whatever way we can, is to protect their mind from fear, from being anxious, from being fearful. Whatever skill we have to do that. And then, of course, generosity giving protection means whatever way that we can is to protect the lives of others. And so that can also take the form of charity to organizations which are responsible for protecting the lives of others. We can give protection in that way. Not just it's material giving, and it's also giving protection. In this, we're fulfilling our potential as a being on the Bodhisattva path. Our business is to protect the lives of others. Or it might be in the type of job that we have, in a caring profession. Or as a healer. And it can be the activity where we save the lives of creatures, where creatures are being killed, saving the life of one insect that's being killed by another, or the process of being destroyed by another. So there are many different ways that we can use this life. You know, we don't have to be wealthy in this way to live a life in which we see our responsibilities to protect others. And perhaps if we're skillful, also those who are in dangerous relationships. We can give protection by giving courage to the person in that relationship, perhaps to leave that relationship, or whatever other way that we can to protect that person in that relationship. And of course, we can even be a person who's responsible for establishing a charity or a project which focuses principally on protecting the lives of others in some way or form. And then there is the generosity of giving the Dharma. So whatever understanding we've received in the Dharma, whatever wisdom we've experienced within the Dharma, and if we've been able to integrate it into our own lives, and then able to impart it to others. So we're extremely fortunate to have made connection with this faultless tradition based on wisdom and compassion at a time when there's a lot of negative energy existing in the world. So our level of understanding may be very modest. We may not have so much understanding at all. But where we've really experienced the Dharma working in our life, we know it's true. Then, without arrogance, there's always the possibility we can help others through the generosity of giving the Dharma. And perhaps it's not directly related to that, but whatever we can do to support the teachings, maybe indirectly can be seen as generosity giving the Dharma, sponsoring the teachings. And the fourth type of generosity giving love, is cultivating that quality within the heart. living with the attitude of wanting others to be happy. So living with that attitude of loving kindness, trying to cultivate that within the heart towards others. So there are different ways then we can cultivate that mind of generosity. And we all have the capacity to some degree to engage in all of those in order to develop ourselves and travel the Bodhisattva path. So then just now conclude to dedicate what are the positive results in reflecting in this way so that we can more strongly generate this quality of mind of wishing to give, living with this quality of mind, so that we can be of greatest benefit to ourselves and to others. Okay, so thank you.